Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, back for a third time today, talking some Miami Hurricanes football as they add another commitment, this time coming from the transfer portal, as former Middle Tennessee State defensive lineman Marley Cook commits to the Miami Hurricanes. And again, you look at the roster construction, you have a ton of young defensive linemen already in this program, coming into this program. There's no better way to supplement all that young talent with proven talent on that defensive line. That's exactly what Marley Cook brings to the table. And for the Miami fans, this is a guy that we've talked about the last couple of weeks as being a target. He wasn't just a target for Miami. I mean, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Ohio State, all offered Marley Cook. He ends up heading to the Miami Hurricanes. And we just talked about it 30 minutes ago when we were breaking down Armando Blunt. This seems to be a destination for guys along the line of scrimmage to come and get developed. Miami gets another one with Marley Cook. Want to get down and talk a little bit about what Marley Cook brings to the table for Miami. A little bit of a different style than CJ Clark, but does do a lot of things that is going to excite a lot of Miami Hurricane fans. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. A shout out to the Miami fans. We have talked. This is our third time talking Miami football. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys, that there's nothing I'd rather be doing than late Wednesday night talking some roster construction for the Miami Hurricanes. Again, appreciate y'all. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Got my cup of coffee right here. And let's get into Marley Cook. And the first thing that I kind of going back to what we said, the transfer portal is used to supplement a roster. And you look at this Miami Hurricanes roster, there's not a lot of holes in it, right? We're still waiting on the quarterback position. But outside of that, we've said it for the last couple of weeks. This is a team that's extremely dangerous, does not have a ton of holes. But you look at that Miami Hurricanes defensive line. It's young. That's probably the one knock. It is extremely talented. It's going to be very good next year when you talk about a guy like Ruben Bain. You talk about Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, CJ Clark coming in from the portal. This is going to be a dominant defensive line. But there's never enough depth that you can get on that defensive line. And that is exactly what Marley Cook brings. He brings depth and he brings a ton of experience. This is a guy that's going into his fifth year of college football and has played at an extremely high level at Middle Tennessee. And if Miami fans remember, and I know you don't want to talk about it, but back when they played Middle Tennessee in 2022, Marley Cook was phenomenal in that game. And I'm guessing that's exactly the time he came on Miami's radar as potentially, hey, if this guy hits the transfer portal, we're going to make sure we go and get him. And that's what happens right here. Marley Cook, now getting into what he brings in, a little bit of a different play style than CJ Clark. CJ Clark is one of those fire hydrants that's going to eat up double teams. He's not necessarily going to stuff the stat sheet, but he's going to be a valuable asset in terms of eating up space, eating up double teams, and letting some other guys on that defensive line and in that linebacker room go to work. And you need those kind of guys. Marley Cook can play that role. I do think that he brings a little bit more juice in terms of creating negative plays, right? You take a look at Marley Cook and what he's done at Middle Tennessee, 19.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, playing on that inside of that defensive line. You'll see him be a three tech. You'll see him line up right over the center, playing that nose. He can take on the double teams. Again, a little bit more of a squattier body, but a ton of play strength. But what he offers a little bit more than CJ Clark is that ability to penetrate and create some negative plays. You take a look at 2023, 14 rush stops. That's massive. Average depth of tackle, 0.2 yards. And you guys know I love talking about that number because I want to know my defensive linemen are making their plays along the line of scrimmage and they're winning at the point of attack. And for the fact that he's making his tackles on average 0.2 yards down the field, that tells you he's winning at the line of scrimmage. And I don't even think 2023 was his best year. You go back to 2022, that's when he really dominated. You look at the pass rush juice that Marley Cook has, 35 quarterback hurries from the inside of that defensive line in 2022. This is a guy that is very good against the run, but offers a ton of upside in terms of the pass rush and on the inside of that defensive line. And you start looking at the projection of what this young but talented Miami Hurricanes defensive line is going to do. That's where it starts. When you can win on first and second down, stop the run, and then have a laundry list of pass rushers that can get after the quarterback on third and long, that's the recipe to having a good defense. Miami did a great job in 2023 of that. They're looking like they're going to do an even better job in 2024. And so if you're Miami, you're extremely excited about Marley Cook. And I know a lot of Miami fans, including myself, I was looking and saying, is this Jeremiah Smith news? When you saw the bat signal come out, Now, it wasn't Jeremiah Smith, but Marley Cook is a massive addition. And another conversation that I think is worth having and is not talked about enough is it is always good to have star power. Like having a guy like Leonard Taylor or having a guy in 2024 like Ruben Bain, the true studs, the guys who can really get after, the ones who are going to be first-round NFL draft picks. Want to know what's more important? When you look at the blueprint of having a dominant defense, it starts with depth on that defensive line. I mean, these guys are big dogs, right? 300-plus pound dudes. They need breaks. You need to cycle in a lot of those guys, not only for 12 games of a season, but 4 quarters of a game. And you have the ability to potentially drop Marley Cook in, a guy that was sought after by multiple Power 5 teams as a rotational piece in that defensive line. I mean, that tells you that kind of is the bones of having an elite defense. When you look at the Georgia Bulldogs defensive line the last couple of years, and we've talked about this a little bit, yes, they had some studs, right? Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Want to know what made that defense special? When Jalen Carter needed to go off the field, I mean, they had guys like Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, who are going to be NFL draft picks, day 3 picks, but NFL draft picks come in and kind of play that rotational piece. You look at Miami, they got the star caliber up front. When they're starting to rotate these guys in, I mean, Marley Cook's coming in, CJ Clark's coming. Guys who are very good football players are in your 2 and 3 deep on that defensive line. And I'm probably leaving out some names. That just tells you how deep and how talented this Miami Hurricanes defensive line is. And we just talked about it, closing out Armando Blunt. If there is one thing to be extremely optimistic about for Mario Cristobal and his tenure at Miami, yes, the recruiting and transfer portal, like the numbers that 24/7 Sports are spitting back out of you, you love that, right? Top 4 class, a top transfer portal class so far. What's more important to me, what's standing out to me, is how good they are along the lines of scrimmage, both on offense and defense. That is going to win a lot of football games for the next couple of years for the Hurricanes. The star talent at the wide receiver position and some of those skill positions, that's going to come. But when you have the ability to dominate the line of scrimmage, that's what wins you football games. It's not always the Jeremiah Smith news, but a guy like Marley Cook is going to play a role, and he's going to allow Miami to be deeper and more experienced on that defensive line. Again, this one's going to fly under the radar, and I get it. Miami Hurricane fans should get very excited about Marley Cook. I mean, 35 quarterback hurries with a 9% pass rush win rate from the inside of that defensive line, some massive numbers. And we're talking about a guy that might not even be a starter for this Miami Hurricanes program. He's going to play a lot. He might not start. Massive news for Miami. Again, 3rd time talking Hurricanes. Who knows? We might even have some Jeremiah Smith news to talk about later today. If that happens, I'm getting myself out of bed. We're talking about it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys as usual. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.